I mention a lot in these video essays about remakes and how they sometimes work, but oftentimes don't. One of the biggest issues I have is that many of the remakes we get are really not needed. I like them, but did we really need an updated version of Friday the 13th, Halloween, or Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Of course not. These are classics for a reason. Those are just the ones that work too. There's plenty, like Jacob's Ladder, Nightmare on Elm Street, or Poltergeist, that run the gamut from boring as hell to offensively bad.
Are you having fun?
Well, in 2024, I'm kind of getting my wish. While something like Fade to Black could get a wonderful update 44 years later and be able to say something new and different, I'm curious what a Street Trash remake will bring to the table. The original is one that was a 42nd Street staple and as gross and straightforward as the title suggests. It's shockingly competently made with a lot of fun to be had, and it's time it gets a revisit of its own.
Nice hearing from you, Carlos.
Street Trash is one of those movies that I saw black and white photos of in a horror reference book. For the longest time, I thought it was a trauma movie, and while it sure as hell shares a lot of what that studio offers, it was a one-off production of Lightning Pictures that would eventually be absorbed by the infamous Vestron.
You bring it up all the time and I'm sick of it!
Back when I was fresh out of high school but still working at Blockbuster, I didn't have a lot to spend my money on. Thankfully, there was a store on Beach Boulevard in Huntington Beach called DVD Planet. The website still exists, but this was like finding a lost city. Just aisles and aisles of DVDs and maybe some early Blu-ray and HD DVDs if you remember that short-lived platform. I picked up movies sight unseen all the time, from foreign classics that I'd only heard about to stuff that Blockbuster wouldn't carry. I bought Sallow and Cannibal Holocaust as my exposure to those, and then one day I saw the 2005 Synapse release of Street Trash, and the memories of those pictures came flooding back. I bought it and went immediately home to watch it. It was pretty much exactly what I thought it would be, and simultaneously like nothing I'd ever seen before.
Here's to you, pussy.
Even though I kept the DVD I'd bought, I didn't watch it again for almost 15 years when JoBlo hosted it on the last drive-in. Let me tell you, it still holds up. It's vile, low budget, dumb as hell, but also shot nicely with some really cool takes, has fantastic gore effects, and its stupidity makes it infinitely rewatchable when you just want to turn your brain off. Like the movies of Frank Henenlotter, where this would fit nicely in a movie marathon with, many of the actors are only known for this film. In fact, if you look at their IMDb pages, their pictures are mostly just stills from this frickin' movie. That being said, the performances of Bill the cop looking to solve the murders and the delightfully unhinged homeless veteran that owns a scrap heap as his kingdom named Bronson are just delightful. Bill Cheppel, who plays the cop, was an actual police officer before, and Vic Noto, who plays Bronson, was hired 12 hours before shooting began and claims he never read the script. It's a cool story that I'm actually half inclined to believe after seeing the movie.
What she think this is, junior high?
The main star of this story is not a person, though. It's Tenafly Viper, the old wine that a liquor store owner finds in a crate buried in the wall and decides to sell it to his homeless vagrants for $1. He ended up adding quite a few plot points that we'll get to later, and that turned into a feature movie. That writer, named Roy Frumkiss, is also famous for doing a well-known horror documentary called Document of the Dead that follows Romero's first 2 Dead films. He did some other stuff too, like being an executive producer on the remake, and as an actor in this movie as a businessman who suffers from melt collateral damage. The director of this movie, who is also the lead camera guy, is named J. Michael Murrow, and that name may not jump out to you, but you've seen his work. Not as a director, probably, though he did do a lot of TV work after this, but no, the dude is a legend behind the camera. A regular surgeon with it, specifically as a Steadicam operator, director of photography, and cinematographer. His list includes Horizon, an American Saga from this year, Heat, Casino, and Jason Takes Manhattan. These 2 men combined made a hell of a trashy picture, and it's also purportedly based on the writer watching Dodeskadin, you know, a Kurosawa movie, which is about as far from street trash as it gets. But hey, the movie does technically have a story, or multiple stories actually. You have the inciting incident with the liquor store getting the Viper drink and one of our 2 main homeless guys getting hold of it. You have the main star of the show with the Viper itself turning the homeless population into melty goo, the cop who is assuming these deaths are murders and investigating, the mob boss's girlfriend getting attacked and consequences from that group, the auto yard hosting the junkyard, and the aforementioned Vietnam vet slumlord psychopath. Oh, and that guy named Bronson also rules with a human femur as his primary weapon. And all those story points tell us that, well, the movie doesn't really have a story, which tracks as it came from a short film, and it's really just a series of short vignettes that are loosely connected by a few characters and geography. Does that matter? Not at all, because the movie has charm. Some of the shots, like I mentioned, are deliriously fun, like when Bronson pulls a poor guy out of his car and swings him onto his own trunk. We get to see a cool shot from his, or at least his glasses, point of view. Another fun early shot is when the main homeless guy enters the liquor store and it switches to a fast-moving camera of his excitement. There's an all-out brawl between Bronson and the cop that is outrageous and fun in a similar way that the They Live fight is. The acting isn't good, or even acting for the most part, and the only actor I've seen anywhere else is the owner of the junkyard, who also happens to be the slimy mayor from The Toxic Avenger. See, it's all coming around to why I thought it was a Troma movie.
Here's your booze. Suck your own dick, you schmuck.
While the film doesn't have a lot of information on it online, there's a wealth of info and behind-the-scenes stuff on the DVD release, including Meltdown Memoirs, which is a documentary by the same creator as the movie. Fred, who is about as much of a protagonist as we're gonna get, almost dies from Viper intake multiple times until he figures out exactly what it is and chooses to weaponize it. The near misses don't really create any tension, but instead act almost like slapstick or even silent movie gags. My favorite little detail of the movie is the fact that Viper doesn't actually kill anyone the same way twice. It melts some, implodes other, and one bum even explodes after drinking it. You'd think the main villain of the movie, Bronson, would go out using Viper, but he doesn't. The Viper itself could have ended up being an end-of-the-world type drink that had commentary on New York in the mid-80s and used to clean it up, but it's made more of a side story with how ridiculous and over-the-top the Bronson junkyard angle is. The music, sound effects, visual effects, and direction camera work more than make up for what street trash lacks. It's elevated above shot-on-video stuff like Things or Sledgehammer, and I would argue it's better made than a lot of the Troma stuff that seems to be shoveled out in the same vein as Roger Corman movies used to. It wasn't a big studio movie, or even one that got lost with a dozen other releases in the same year as it might have with a Full Moon type schedule. It played in midnight shows and across grimy theaters in LA and New York, but doesn't have the same popularity as a Basket Case or Toxic Avenger.
Before we continue with our video, here's a reminder to click the Store tab on any of our JoBlo channels and browse our collection of the latest and freshest designs in our merch store. Go get you some.
Those that have seen it are typically big fans, and without a big release from Scream Factory, Vinegar Syndrome, or Severin Films, it remains somewhat obscure. Even with the Joe Bob episode shining a light on it, that has been lost in the shuffle too, with The Last Drive-In having over 100 episodes. The tone is always consistently silly, but some scenes do jump out.
What the fuck is happening?
How can a Vietnam flashback and exploding winos be in the same movie as a gassy and fart noise-filled hobo, a love story between a homeless guy and a shop worker, and a murder case? They can't and shouldn't be, but it works. Everything comes together and finally culminates when a couple of the storylines, and I use that term very loosely, come together with Fred's brother Kevin and Wendy being chased by Bronson for flashback reasons. Bronson has become a full-blown slasher villain now, using a bone from the cop as his new weapon. Remember when I said that Bronson doesn't meet his end via Viper? That's because the brothers use an air canister to decapitate him like he's a final boss at the end of a Resident Evil game. I know this review has been all over the place, and that's okay. So is the movie. There really is no coherent plot to break down or even follow that closely. You aren't watching street trash for the story though, let's be honest. You're watching and rewatching it because it's absurd and fun and overall dumb.
Ugh, shit.
Its gore was definitely more popular overseas, but it's found its niche out here and is a pass-along title that those who have seen it get to initiate others into the club. I don't care if the new movie has a more coherent story or wants to say something important. I just hope it has fun and tries to outdo some of the gore of the original movie. It really doesn't matter though if it's bad or good, because the original will always hold a special place in horror fans' hearts.